Hey, it's Jer. On today's Daily Detroit, something fun for your Friday. There are some great local businesses who have pivoted through this pandemic. One of them is Mongers Provisions, with stores in Detroit and Ferndale. When retail traffic slowed for them, they adapted and started doing virtual tastings of their cheeses, charcuterie, and chocolate on Zoom. And honestly, as much as it was kind of crazy when I first heard about it, it's become a thing. You can bring a charming cheesemonger right to your backyard while enjoying a box of delectable goodies. So ready your taste buds as Sven, Gustafson, and engineer Randy Walker did one of these for us in the socially distanced backyard of our North End studios with Zach Berg, their founder and co-owner. We are publishing this on September 4th, 2020. We'll hit the backyard after a quick reminder to remember to become a member. We have a brand new tier, the $10 Raise a Glass tier. That's where we're sending you a daily Detroit bourbon glass with our logo on it. Now, this isn't for sale. You can only get this as a member or a guest of the show. So remember to become a member at patreon.com/dailydetroit.
All right, we are here for another Daily Detroit first. We are set up in the North End headquarters backyard, social distancing. I am joined by Randy Walker, my esteemed colleague.
Hello, hello.
Jer Stays is twiddling the knobs, and we got a special treat, for you, but also for ourselves. I'm not going to lie. This
is impressive.
We got a beautiful box of provisions from Mongers Provisions, and joining us to kind of walk us through everything and, run a virtual COVID-19 tasting is Zach Berg, the founder and co-owner of Mongers Provisions. Zach, welcome to Daily Detroit.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
And thanks so much for this beautiful box. As we talked about before, I'm pretty much going to let you go with this. But before we get into that, just tell us really quick about Mongers Provision and give us the rundown on the business.
Mongers is a specialty retailer, and we really focus on cheese, chocolate, charcuterie. Those are our kind of three main categories, but we love a lot of different categories of specialty foods. So we have great conservas, wines, local beers. But what we focus on above anything is this kind of intersection of story and food. We think food's such a great way to connect people, whether it's the people around the table or to connect you to faraway geographies and cultures. And so we love to tell stories about the passionate producers that we feature, because quite frankly, they're too busy making our food to talk about themselves. And so that's kind of where we see ourselves fitting in.
Excellent. And you have two locations, right? On Cass in Detroit and also now in Ferndale?
Yeah, we're in Midtown in Detroit. And then we have a wonderful location inside the Rust Belt Market, open on the weekends at Woodward and 9 Mile. And so those are our two places right now. And then, of course, in this brave new world we're all living through, we have e-commerce, and that's alive and well. And we're doing a lot of these Zoom tastings, which has been such a cool way to connect, kind of mimicking that across the counter experience we used to have every day. And now we can do it once a week or a couple times a week with a group of people. So it's been really fun.
But the stores for now open for in-person?
They're both open, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Without further ado, why don't you kick things off here? What do you want us to do first?
Tonight, what we're going to do is kind of walk through all the different foods in front of you. We're going to talk about the wine first, because I really like to talk about, the cheeses are the stars of the show. And so we're going to try the chocolate, we're going to try the charcuterie, the wine, the crackers, but really all of those other accoutrements are meant for you guys to enjoy freely. So as you try a cheese, then you can add it with a little meat, make a little cracker sandwich, and try it in different combinations. I'm going to walk us through kind of a straight up tasting of the cheeses.
Excellent.
But we're going to talk about how wine influences it in pairings. And hopefully by the end of it, I'll give you guys a little language to help you when you make your own pairings at home.
Right. Speaking of the wine.
Boom. Oh, I love that.
Pop this bad boy open. And Randy?
I've got an aerator if you want to aerate it.
Oh, Randy brought an aerator.
Lovely.
I drink wine all the time, and I never use an aerator. But tell us about the wine that you've generously provided for us.
So we have a really cool Kenenau, and Kenenau is the Sardinian name for Grenache. And I love this wine. It's become a house favorite. Will, my business partner, really enjoyed Kenenau, and he introduced me to this wine when we first opened. The reason I like it is I think that Grenache in general, but especially this, has a really pretty side to it. It has a floral quality, but it's really dark, more purple fruits, right? We don't think of the bean cherries or cranberries. We think of darker, more robust fruit. And that really lends itself to all the different flavors we want it to kind of work with cheese. We're going to be looking for, like I said, blackberry, a little bit more of the earthiness to it, and maybe some leather notes to it.
Very nice.
The meat we have is speck. Speck's going to go really well with that, right? Kind of this idea, if it grows together, it goes together, both coming from the same country of origin, definitely different regions within it. Speck is similar to prosciutto, but the big difference is it's smoked a little bit. It's pressed as well, and so there's a different chew to it. It's a little denser. They spice it with a little bit of juniper, black pepper, and bay leaf. And so nothing like heavy-handed. It's a really subtle smoke, but it gives it a little bit more robustness. And now let's jump into the cheeses. And like I said earlier, if you guys have any questions along the way, this is always so much more fun when it's interactive. So let me know what you guys are thinking. But I want to start off with Michigan. So Michigan historically has always had a lot of agricultural infrastructure, but I don't know that on a national level, we think of it as a cheese state.
Mm-hmm.
We certainly have our pecaning and we have some great dairies, but in the last 5, 6, 7 years, we've started to grow our national reputation thanks to places like Zingerman's Creameries, Evergreen Lanes, and really to Idle Farms. So Idle Farms is up in Leelanau, in Northport to be specific.
Yep.
They have a 200-acre farm and they bought their own herd. So they have a closed herd of goats. They're raising the animals and then making cheese. And that's significant because I always like to say when you put that much love and attention into raising the animal, you're rarely going to trip at the finish line, so to speak, and make a mediocre cheese. You're pot committed. You're going to make a great cheese.
The bees, I was going to say, are very interested in this spread that's slowly emerging here on the table.
I can imagine. And this one has that great fennel pollen, so the bees are really going to love that. But this has been the taste of summer for me. The fennel pollen is what you see on the outside of your goat cheese.
Yeah.
And then there's a little garlic in the actual paste. And this cheese gives me so much spring vibes, right? Whether I'm cooking it with a really nice fresh pasta full of greens, or if I'm just spreading it on crackers. The red wine and the goat cheese might not pair so well. Goat cheese and red wine kind of fight, but this is a really nice bite. With the speck, it's going to be out of this world, I think. So make sure you try those together.
I tried it alone. I'm going to try it with the speck now.
Yep.
It's really nice, though.
I don't recommend the cheese and wine together.
Yeah, goat cheese and red wine rarely go well together. And when you eat this cheese, I always find it remarkably not goaty. I know that that's not the most elegant tasting description of a goat cheese, but it's incredibly clean. The milk quality they have is amazing.
For a goat cheese, too, I think it's got a very dry, almost crumbly. You know, goat cheeses tend to be kind of, wet and
Schmeary?
Almost schmeary. Yeah, almost like a cream cheese.
Yeah.
But this is dry and kind of crumbly, and it's got a herbal, kind of grassy flavor. It's really nice.
You nailed it with the textural differences.
It's really fresh tasting.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. A little taste of our home steak.
Yeah, for sure.
I always find it to be, worth mentioning that at Mongers, we have a lot of objectives. And the last thing I want to do is just feed you cheese for the sake of feeding you cheese. I want to introduce you, like I said, and connect you to really passionate producers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so much fun to show off tiny producers in Michigan. And we have a real love of showing off Midwestern producers, but it's near impossible to do the world of cheese justice without jumping over the pond. And so we have a lot of international cheeses, but we try to be just as selective and make sure they're special and tell you a story. This selection, I have to give some credit to Rob. He wanted to show off some of his favorites. And, Rob has good taste. He knows what it's about. And so he has a Hallerhacker coming up next to you. And Hallerhacker is, I know, his favorite cheese and one of my all-time favorites. Hallerhacker is a great story. Walter Ross is the name of the gentleman who makes it. And have you guys heard of a cheese called Appenzeller? It's a famous Swiss cheese, somewhat esoteric still.
I have not.
I have not either.
Okay. So if you can think of Gruyere, right, as a base idea, Appenzeller is a spicier or bigger flavored cheese made in a similar region. And Walter and his family, third generation Appenzeller makers. But the Swiss Cheese Consortium, they really want to encourage the sales of only a handful of cheeses. And they control this market in such a way that Walter started getting graded down because his cheeses were so exceptional that you could still taste that it was Walter Ross's Appenzeller. This didn't work well for Walter. He decided he didn't want to deal with this kind of politics and bureaucracy of cheese. He just wanted to make the best possible cheese, right?
Okay.
And so Hallerhacker was born. And Hallerhacker is Swiss for a cellar sitter.
It's fantastic.
It's such a fun cheese. the youngest child in Swiss culture is so young and, let's say, incompetent that he is not capable of any of the household chores or any of the farm tasks. So his job is to watch the cheeses in the cellar and make sure they age right. It's an old kind of Swiss folklore, and that's what the artist depiction on the cover. And you only have a sliver, so you won't see the creepy Hollerhocker kid, but he's become kind of an icon of the nerdy cheese world.
This one strikes me as a lot of Swiss cheeses and Gruyere especially have like a little bit of a funk to them.
Yeah.
This one is more like sharp almost, it kind of fits that sharp profile and rich though too. And it's really good.
Is there a casing on this we need to remove or?
It's an edible rind.
Okay.
It's a rind that's polarizing, right? Nothing's going to hurt you. If you had the paper on the one side, it's a soy-based paper.
Okay.
But the rind is still going to be really earthy, right? It's a cave-exposed rind. The first cheese we had didn't have a rind, but different than a brie, it has a lot more salt and funk.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who love these rinds, but not everybody does. What do you think of it? Are you a rind guy?
I am, yes.
I'm fine with rind.
Yeah.
It's almost got like a meaty quality to it.
That's the word I was about to say. I always get like bone broth.
Yeah.
To your point earlier, those mountain cheeses, those wash rind Alpine cheeses have this like fermented funk, but this one goes all the way to meaty. It's a strong cheese.
Speaking of meat, any good reason I shouldn't pair it with a little bit of speck?
Once you've met the cheese on its own, I encourage you to meet it with a little speck. And let's try it with the wine too, because I think this is going to start to get to the point where those really dark qualities of the fruit and the meatiness of the cheese will start to taste like braised meat, right? That idea of taking a roast and adding some fruits and stuff like that.
Yeah, with a little piece of the speck on there, that's outstanding.
This cheese has a nice buttery texture too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that richness.
One of the things that's unique and makes this different than an Appenzeller is usually it's a safer bet to skim a little fat away from a cheese like this. Anything that goes past, let's say, a year to 18 months, the more fat, the more volatile, right? And so it's kind of hedging your bet to make a leaner cheese. And he was like, once he felt unleashed from the consortium, he went full bar and just high fat cheese. This is almost like a triple cream if you calculate it that way. It's just not how we talk about firm cheeses. So it's incredibly rich.
I cut myself a slightly bigger piece this time, and I notice when I bite into it, I get some of the little crystals.
Yeah, so those crystals are called tyrosine in a cheese like this. And tyrosine is a naturally occurring amino acid that crystallizes as it ages. And for a cheese professional, it's what we're paying attention to extrapolate how it's going to age. Similar to tannin structures in a wine versus acid, you eat a cheese and you look at how much tyrosine versus flavor and fat, how old the cheese is. And I get a sense of, is this cheese going to be delicious in a year, or is it going to be really good now?
Where did you learn all about, cheeses and wines and everything? What is your background?
I've been selling cheese off and on for 12 years. When I first started, there was no certifications, there's no contests, there's no cohesiveness amongst the industry. We had a trade group since 1983 called the American Cheese Society. And so in the last couple of years, they've created a certification. So I'm now a certified cheese professional through the ACS. And it's designed to be kind of a baseline of knowledge for cheesemaker, importer, monger, whatever. And then there's also been a contest kind of internally called the Cheesemonger Invitational. And in 2014, I got second place in the country in the Invitational. That was a real skyrocketing moment for my career.
Excellent.
Your mention of the tyrosine crystals earlier brought to mind the word tyromancy, which is fortune telling based on observing cheese.
Is this a real word, tyromancy?
It is. Tyromancy,
oh my Lord,
yes.
I love this.
Randy for the win.
That is, you just made my day with that. I'm going to try to work that into my next tasting.
Yeah. Excellent. I'm a huge fan of like cheese and crackers and stuff, and I'm a happy boy right now.
Yeah, this is amazing so far.
Good. It's adult Lunchables, right? I think that for so many of us, we were trained to eat this way, and we just called it a different thing than a plowman's lunch back then. Let's talk about Gouda. We actually just did a deep dive Gouda class not too long ago. We've been doing so many of these tastings and enjoying them, but we keep trying to challenge ourselves to come up with new ideas. And often it's kind of this spread idea, what you guys are experiencing, and we wanted to have an outlet to have a little deeper dive. So we came up with this idea of doing our AGCs of cheese, our Alpines, our Goudas, and our Cheddars. And it was so interesting to deep dive into Gouda because I think Gouda is one of the most ubiquitous and beloved cheeses. And it means so little from like a cheesemonger's perspective, I can have a cow's milk Gouda, sheep's milk Gouda, goat milk Gouda, young Gouda, old Gouda. The word Gouda is fairly nondescript, but I think that people love it. There is one technical reality of a Gouda, which is that it's a washed curd cheese, which tends to make a cheese a little sweeter.
This Gouda has really incredible orange color.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about that. How does it get that?
Yeah. So that color is totally annatto seed or achiote seed. And this is what's been coloring cheese really since around the 1600s.
Does it give flavor to the cheese?
Very, very little to no flavor. I personally cannot taste blind an orange cheddar versus a white cheddar, which is what people usually see the side-by-side options.
I do get a little sweetness from this, but it's also very much saltier than the other two cheeses we've tried.
Yeah, this is butterscotch. This is one of the only cheeses I really love pairing with whiskeys and scotches and bourbons. There's so much of that kind of shared flavor profile that it can work. I'm curious how it's going to do with today's wine.
I just tried it with the triple berry jam that you also provided us with, and it's outstanding. Oh my God. The salt and the sweetness.
Have you guys heard of Tara Gray from Gus and Gray? She's who makes that jam.
No, I'm not familiar.
So she's local. She mostly sells out at Eastern Market, but you can find it at a couple stores. She is in the process of building out her own space to make it Eastern Market. And for the last 5 or so years, she's been making everything at the Traffic Jam and Snug in Midtown. The trifecta, the triple berry, is like, it took us a little bit of trial and error to find that as our signature jam.
It's good. I'm a huge fan of good jams. Broadly speaking, like, this is the kind of thing that you specialize in, right? Like, if somebody walks into Mongers and they're like, I'm having a party, I want to make a nice charcuterie board, that's right up your alley.
You are right. This is what we did pre-COVID.
Yeah.
I helped you create a selection of stuff to make a spread like this, or we make beautiful boards that are very artistically approached and done with a lot more care than just cubing a cheese and putting on a black plastic tray. That's kind of always what we did. And when COVID happened, it translated from us helping you with a 50-person gathering you're going to host at your house to us connecting in this way across the table while you had 2 people eat a little tasting. And we've been really lucky that we had an avenue to pivot, and that it was so natural to us, right? We always told stories. We always shared food, and it's no different right now. It's just very different all at the same time.
So I do want to mention that the triple berry jam is raspberries, blackberries, and blueberries. And if you are a longtime listener of the show, you will know that I am not a huge fan of blueberries, but I think the other berries cover it up enough that I don't really get that pronounced blueberry flavor that I despise.
And he's in the distinct minority, we would add.
We're a blueberry state. I think we're in the top 3 producers nationally of blueberries.
I would also add that listeners email us all the time, like asking, like, what does Randy have against blueberries? What's not to like about blueberries? Which, I don't know, Randy, what is not to like about blueberries?
It's just something about the flavor and the...
That's so delicious. I know, it's really...
So this Gouda's rind is not an edible rind, right? It looks a little chewy and stretchy.
Not edible. Yeah, we have wax at that point.
There's some white powder on it. That's probably just a mold that's...
So that's actually really large tyrosine crystals. That is what tyrosine looks like when it's uncovered. And that's this nice little eye and pocket. I also have a wedge with just like, it looks frosted almost. It's wild.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm going to take a picture of that.
Yeah, what makes this Gouda special, and this is my number 1 selling cheese historically. Lemieux's signature Gouda has been just a workhorse for us, and it's such a special cheese.
Yeah, the saltiness is fantastic.
I just tried the Gouda with some of the speck, and man, that's a party in your mouth, man. That is unbelievable. I'm left with a slight hint of funk, like a really nice, appealing funk, but it's super interesting.
Yeah.
So, Zach, what advice would you have for the listener out there who is just going to the store and doesn't necessarily have a cheesemonger available to them, but wants to put together a nice charcuterie board? Like, what are the kind of basics to know to like really put together a great cheese and meat board?
I would definitely say, befriend a cheesemonger. We're all very nice people, and I'm available if anybody needs a new cheese friend. But if you don't have somebody available to ask these questions of some of the baseline ideas that I always kind of take with me when I approach this is, if it grows together, it goes together. It's an old kind of saying, and it will get you, I'd say, over 50% of the way there, right? So if I'm looking at, it still takes a little knowledge, I get that, but if I was sitting there looking at a Pecorino Toscano, a cheese from Tuscany of sheep's milk,
Mm-hmm.
I can be pretty well suited to look for a Tuscan red or white, depending on my preference, and pair those, right? These people have been making the same food in the same villages or cities for hundreds, thousands of years. There's no sense in making something that doesn't go with the local wine. There's some knowledge there, but it definitely will get you part of the way. And then the other thing I encourage people to do is try these little micro experiments when you're out and about. The hard part is remembering what you like. I know that, but you can learn a lot when you have two or three wines open at a cocktail party and there's a couple cheeses. You can play around and kind of look for the things that you enjoy and focus on things that you do know, like textures, right? We can all look at this Gouda and get a sense of how salty it's going to be before we eat it. We know it's going to have certain flavors, and we know the goat cheese is going to have a certain creamy quality. And I can pair based on those things, right? If I know I have a very creamy brie or goat cheese, I might look for a really minerally driven or acidic white wine to kind of cut through all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of thinking about what I do know in any given time, playing a little detective work is always important. I also think it's important to decide who leads. It might sound kind of silly, but it is rare that I can showcase all of the cheeses and all of the wines perfectly balanced the whole time,
Mm-hmm.
right? I have to decide, am I trying to show off this bottle of wine that I bought that I want all my friends to love? Or am I trying to show off this beautiful spread of cheese and the wine's there to enhance the cheese? So deciding that is helpful, I find.
What about like fruit? For that matter, other accompaniments. I mean, I've seen, like stone ground mustards on charcuterie
Yeah.
platters or
Olives, pickles,
olives. Yeah. I mean, what
peppers.
about those kind of
Yeah.
things?
So I think those are wonderful and they only enhance both the flavors and experience of eating, but they're also so visually beautiful. That contrast is so important visually. You know, you lay out all the cheeses and it's the many shades of butterfat. These orange ones are great because they're a little pop of color, but cheese is somewhat monochromatic. And so we use a lot of cornichon, the little baby pickles. We also use these little peppers called Peruvian pearls or sweetie drops, they're also called. And they're a sweet little red pepper and they give this splash of color. In terms of fruit, ideally, there's a fresh fruit like grapes and a dried fruit, right? Because it's such a different texture
Yeah.
and opens up a whole other bouquet of flavors to go with your wines and your cheeses. And then bread, right? We want to have a vehicle. And so we tend to give boards that have a baguette and crackers. We always pair Marcona almonds. I love Marcona almonds. If you guys haven't had a Marcona almond, they're the kind of flatter, rounder almond, and they're very special, higher fat, beautiful stuff. Last thing I want to mention is that we always pair with chocolate.
Ah, yes.
And it's not because we think cheese and chocolate always go together, although we have a lot of fun pairings we can suggest. But it's been one of our, three pillars since we started, right? Cheese, chocolate, charcuterie. It's in our logo. So chocolate is sometimes not enjoyed with the board. Sometimes it is. I find that depending on the size of the board that's going out, they're often a host or hostess gift that gets squirreled away before anybody sees them. I think it's a great way for us to continue this conversation of connection. In this case, you guys have a Jamaican bar from one of the most esteemed Jamaican estates, right? And you even see on the bar, it says Bachelor Hall Estate. And we can think about it from a wine perspective. When it's an estate wine, it's more expensive than if it's a regional wine, which is more expensive than if it's the state of California wine, right? When I buy a Hershey's bar, it's just chocolate from somewhere on planet Earth. This bar, it could just say Jamaican chocolate, and they're buying from all sorts of different farms. But in this case, we're buying a state fruit. We're buying beans from this growing source. We've loved expanding people's kind of vision of chocolate. I think if you ask the average person, what's your favorite chocolate? They're going to say Belgian, Swiss, German chocolate. And those are wonderful chocolate producing countries, but there's no cocoa pods growing there.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah.
And so we've erased somebody out of the picture, or most often not somebody, but a group of people who have grown this cacao, harvested this cacao, fermented it, dried it, and then shipped it around the world. And as we want to connect people, and as we want to be a transparent company, it's really important to us that we find chocolates that are directly sourced. We have a couple chocolates, Moru, Mirzam, Manoa. They all happen to start with an M. where they're actually growing and making it. I feel like you can get a lot more information. It's a lot more interesting kind of conversation when you have that direct feedback loop. What you do to the chocolate and growing, you then taste in the bar. And so often with these agricultural products, they never get to experience what they've grown.
Yeah, there was a period in my life where I didn't really care about chocolate so much, and I was kind of proudly like, oh no, I don't really eat chocolate and sweets and everything, but I've gone completely full circle from that, and I've always got like a high percentage cacao chocolate bar in my cabinet now because it's just fantastic. Just grab a little piece of the chocolate bar and eat that. I mean, especially with a nice glass of red wine, like it's hard to beat that.
Yeah. The satisfaction levels I find are so deep, right? You only need this little corner when you talk about a high quality cacao like this. And when you think of something, I know I keep being a bully to Hershey's, but when I think of like a Hershey's extra special dark bar, or God forbid, a milk bar, you eat it, you don't even know you unwrapped it, right? It's just like gone.
Yep.
You're not conscious. It goes so fast. And that's because you came for chocolate. And even with the special dark, you're at 46% cacao to 75% of this bar, right? If you talk about a milk bar, you're at 15. And so we're not prejudiced against milk chocolates. I love milk chocolate. It's probably my preference in some ways, but our milk chocolates tend to start at a 40% chocolate. They're already closer to the extra special dark by Hershey's, and that's less room for sugar and mishigas, to use a little Yiddish. And so there's chocolate. It's what I came for. As a fat kid who turned pro, I agree that a little corner of the chocolate bar is like the perfect dessert sometimes.
Yeah.
This is great. This is so smooth and silky.
Yeah, that company is amazing. So they're in Suffolk, England.
Yeah.
Pump Street, that's where they're making chocolate, but they're sourcing directly from this estate in Jamaica. And the Jamaica one, to me, is so right down the middle. It's not super fruity. It's not super dark and coffee note. It's just kind of this fudgy middle lane. And I think it's one of our best chocolates.
So Zach, you were talking about like how your business has changed and adapted because of the pandemic and everything. How has it affected you? Like, is your retail walk-in traffic way down? Like, I mean, are you guys doing okay?
We celebrated the slowest walk-in retail of the company's 3-year history about last Saturday. So
celebrated with air quotes. Yeah.
So yeah, big air quotes. And so we had a less than $100 day in walk-in traffic. It was really,
brutal.
A painful moment. The lucky thing is that we found other avenues with Zoom tastings that we're not in danger of being blinked out of existence, knock on wood, and thank God. But it's been tumultuous to say the least. I think like many food businesses, the first couple weeks was just, oh my God, what's going to happen? I have food that's very perishable and I need to get it to people. And so we were lucky in those first couple panicked weeks. People were buying cheese and canned fish, and we started selling chickens and eggs and flowers and trying to just be a service to our community. And, we all stayed afloat and kind of experienced the just pure craziness in the beginning together. And then we had, I'd say, about a month or so where we weren't inviting guests into the store and we were just acting as an order fulfillment store. And we got to learn how to do e-commerce in a much more meaningful way. And now it's all just kind of balancing and going. I'd say the biggest shift is the idea that you just decided tonight to have a little cheese and wine. That's kind of gone away. It's a little bit more pre-planned. It's a little bit more occasion-based. And we've always been an occasion-based business, but every once in a while, someone walked by the store before, and now it's either a tasting like we're doing right now, or you're gifting somebody something, or a care package. And the business is alive. It's just in a different bucket in some ways. We're way more a care package place and a event experience place.
So how does somebody go about getting one of these tasting events that we're doing here? Do they just order off the website, or do you contact them? Is it off the shelf, or is it customized?
Either or. So we offer probably twice a month a public class, right? Right now we're doing a conservacy series, which we're all very excited about. We've really been delving into canned fish and mussels and all sorts of things. Nice. And so we're going to do a conserva tasting. And those, just like you said, you go online, you see the classes being offered, you click, we send you the box and a Zoom link, we all meet and taste together. The other option is we do a lot of custom tastings. Corporations, or dinner parties, birthday parties, they've all kind of switched, right? Whether it's your work team getting together or a way to meet your interns somewhere out of state that you haven't yet met, it's been a fun way to bring together. So we'll do, a half hour to an hour tasting, and then I'll leave the Zoom call and they'll have a meeting afterwards. We do a lot of custom ones, and I always love, as somebody who writes a lot of different menus, to have something to think about for a custom one.
Yeah, neat.
One thing we didn't mention is this handout that you packed in our box standard, describing all of the products?
Yeah, every box comes with a menu.
Perfect.
And, it's a hope that if you guys ask the question and we went on a crazy tangent about dying cheeses and there was something I really felt like I needed to say, it's there. It just also, I think, puts people's mind at ease. So there's always a menu. There's always as much information as we can share with you.
Well, it's been a wonderful and delicious dive into the wonderful world of food. Zach Berg from Mongers Provisions. Thanks so much, man. This is fantastic. Very generous of you, and delicious and informative.
Thank you. I'm so appreciative of your time, and I'm glad you guys enjoyed it as well.
And that'll do it for today's show and our shows for the week. A couple of quick housekeeping things. First, look, I don't plan, unless something changes, on doing a show Monday, and that's in honor of the Labor Day holiday. Of course, always, it's news. Things can happen, but I'd like a day off. Also, thanks to Sven and Randy today, Fletcher Sharp, who is currently in the wilds of Colorado, Cheyenne Nocerini for editing this episode and a number of segments for the show this week. And of course, thanks to our members who make this all possible. If you have feedback, hit us up at our voicemail at 313-789-3211. That's 313-789-3211. We may just play it on the air, or shoot me an email at jer@dailydetroit.com. With that, I'm Jer Stays. Thanks for listening, take care of each other, and I'll see you around Detroit.